On today's episode of Dance Med Spotlight, I get to speak with Dr. Kristen Schuyten. She's a physical therapist, sports specialist, and strength and conditioning specialist. She's super passionate about things like concussion, the importance of proper warm-ups and cool-downs, and thinking about the sources and types of information, particularly that we find online, as we're looking for ideas for exercises or trying to improve flexibility or a technique or a million other things. One of the things that she really goes more in depth on is this topic of concussion, including sharing some tidbits of how are we helping dancers return not only to dance, but academics if they're still a student, say in university. Some of the things that we need to consider from the dance teacher or artistic director perspective to help support these dancers, and things that we need to be considering as a provider. If you want to learn more about any of these topics or other things that we also talk about, if you want to learn more about any of these topics or some of the other ones that we touch on in this episode, make sure to listen to the entire thing. Welcome back to another episode of Dance Med Spotlight, where we talk about all things dance medicine and dance science. Today, I am excited for my guest, Dr. Kristen Schuyten. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So my number one question for anyone who joins me here, tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of this journey to doing what you do now, working with performers.
Yes. So I myself, I grew up dancing. I danced for about 20 years or so, doing everything from small town dance studio and then attending drop-in classes when I was going through school at Michigan, and even did some competitive too. And then some ballroom with my husband as well, as we were getting ready for our wedding. And now going through all of that, now I'm a mom. I have two kiddos that are performers as well. My daughter is just this year competitive with dance, and my son is going to be starting band this year. So we have a couple of performers in our family, and they just did a musical theater camp too. So they were loving that. When it comes to having then going into performing arts medicine, dance medicine, it actually started, I had had a couple, as I went into become a PT, I had had lots of injuries and was trying to self-treat. One of the craziest stories that I had was I had a partial Achilles tear right before, about a week before a dance competition. And I was 19, I hadn't started PT school yet, and I knew something was going on and couldn't point my foot. It was on my turning leg. I had a 16 count forte combo, and I'm like, what is happening here? And then when I got to the competition, there was a trainer there that tried to tape my ankle like an ankle sprain and realized that was not going to work, and still was able to muscle through. I don't know how I did it. Fell a couple times, but was able to get through the performance. And then going into PT school, realizing that there was a big disconnect in what was, even at that time, back in the early 2000s, that there just really wasn't a lot out there. That was still when REDS was called the female athlete triad, and there wasn't really anything evidence-based for really working with dance medicine that was at least permeated within the sports medicine research. And it was tough because I was able to do some projects when I was in PT school that were more dance medicine specific, which was amazing. But it was really trying to kind of carve my own path with that. And then being able to work in sports medicine now, I work at MedSport Domino's Farms with Michigan Medicine. It's still been very much been that, and working then with the School of Music, Theater, and Dance now. When I first started having patients as I was a new PT, I was able to have some dancers and dance faculty, and it was really interesting because they loved that I could speak the terminology, that I'd had experience as a past injured dancer and trying to get myself back, but then also still realizing this disconnect even with the university committee and something as big as, University of Michigan, that they didn't have those resources available. And so since then, we've been able to do a lot more, going from pro bono, different types of screening, other projects that we were able to do on site, to then just growing and growing. And now I split my time between campus and still the clinic setting, and do screenings and concussion baseline testing. And we're doing research on concussion. And then my work in dance has actually led me to do some work with US figure skating as well, because I got involved with ice dancers, which ballroom on ice, which is amazing. But then being able to work with figure skating and bring my dance background into working with skaters too. So it's been a long path. I've been a PT for almost 20 years now, and definitely learning from experience and having been an injured performer and then dealing with that on my own and really not knowing what to do or what to say and feeling like I didn't have the healthcare community to back me up on that. And then now being able to be an advocate for my patients, as well as seeing where there's still gaps in research and needs within the dance medicine community, has been really worthwhile. So it's kind of the
Mhm.
long and short of the path to go.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like so many guests and so many people who've gotten into dance medicine, performing arts medicine, we have had history ourselves of maybe not great experiences,
Mm-hmm.
maybe rough rehab journeys, things where it's
Yes.
like, "Ah, I want to do something different for
Mm-hmm.
the next generation of folks."
Yep.
So
Exactly.
I know one of the big areas that you do research in is concussion, like you
Yes.
mentioned. Um, and I think one of the interesting things is, a lot of times when we're hearing about concussion, we're thinking return to sport, in this case, more specifically, return to dance,
Mm-hmm.
but also thinking they're also needing to return to normal human life.
Yes.
And how are we helping manage all of that, not just the return to sport?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you wanna share about that
Yeah.
topic? I'm sure a
There's
lot.
there's a there's a lot, and it could probably go longer than the time that we have available
Mhm,
here.
mhm,
So I've been fortunate to be wrapped into some presentations with APTA, with CSM, with IADAMS, with PAMA, with all these amazing performing arts and medical rehabilitation organizations, and being able to present what we've been doing. My appointment is not in research, but I have some amazing colleagues that do this so well, and so I'm more than happy to be a bit of a think tank when it comes to some of this, to be able to give ideas, and then the amazing ATs, PhDs are able to run with it. But
mhm,
what we've been able to do is, I was wrapped into a Delphi study that was with Dr. Alyssa Mimini. She is out of University of New Mexico, a faculty there, PT, or excuse me, an athletic trainer and PhD, and she had put out a call for return to learn progressions for university students. And because it wasn't, there didn't have anything that was set and adopted at the university level for being able to have a stepwise progression for students to get back to full academic course load.
mhm,
And I was able to be connected with her, wrapped into the study, to be able to have, not only because I'm faculty within the dance department at Michigan, but also having the clinical background, having my own students and patients that have been dealing with the multiple layers of this as performers and as students that had the academic and the movement-based classes as well, that
mhm,
we had noticed that there was still, even though we were having this study trying to look at return to learn progressions for the average university student, college student, that we realized, okay, well, now it's a double-edged sword for our performers that not only have academic classes and have to get back, like you said, to everyday life, to everyday lives of being student, but then also, then if their grades were dependent on their ability to move and perform and take in all of the sensory input, what was that going to do to them if they couldn't do it well because of a concussion and trying to recover from that at the same time?
yeah,
So it was through the course of us doing the return to learn, the Delphi study, all of that process, that Alyssa and I had, we had multiple conversations that maybe we should do something for performers as well. And then put together a systematic review, which we were then able to see that there really wasn't a lot of research out there, especially for university level performing arts students. And then now we're just submitted the first manuscript for the university performing artists for then that return to the classroom in their movement type settings, and have, it's
mhm,
based on the concussion and sport group, that 6-step type of process to be able to go through for that full return to performance. And it's for all disciplines, not just dance, but also looking at theater and music as well, and trying to have it be where it gives some ideas, some progressions for not only the students themselves, but faculty, support staff, the healthcare professionals that are working with them, especially ones that may not be as versed in some of the performing arts terminology, so that
mhm.
they have a little bit more understanding and they can also assist in this care.
Yeah, and that's amazing because I think concussion in and of itself is complex enough,
Mhm.
much less adding movement components, and especially as a student where there
Mhm.
are grades tied to this and
Yes.
expectations from the university or college that they're participating in. One of the things that you mentioned is
even looking at it from like the faculty lens and some of the guidance there, what are some of the things that you have found to be really important in communicating this return to dance and academics for performers?
It's been somewhat challenging. We actually just did the soft rollout of the protocol for the dance department last year. And we have some faculty that I know want to be very involved and other ones that may just not know what to do. And especially when we have students that if they have a concussion and they can't move, they can't perform within the classroom setting or do their performances, what else are you going to give them for an assignment so that they can still participate? And especially if they have vestibular symptoms or they have something that may delay their progression, their full return because of how severe, how intense their symptoms are and how long that takes to get better. So what can we do? So those are things that we've tried to work on. I would say with the faculty, some of the biggest challenges is that just that they know what a concussion is, that they have that education, because one of the things that we see from NCAA, from even our high school athletics associations that are statewide, you have mandated concussion education that is inherent within coaches, support staff, parents. I know my kiddos play soccer and I have to sign a sheet that tells me that I know that, that they might have a head injury for a 5 or a 6-year-old participating
Yeah.
in a Parks and Rec league for soccer. And even though they don't do headers. So,
Mhm.
but when we look at that, there is a disconnect in not only mandatory education, mandatory policies and procedures, clearance to like medical clearance to be able to get back into these settings
Yeah.
where they still have a risk of possibly injuring themselves, or if they're doing partner work, if they're doing anything that requires stage blocking, maybe injuring somebody else, okay, and not just
Mhm.
another head injury, which is a huge thing for any type of post-concussive or second impact syndrome, but also then looking at musculoskeletal injuries because the reaction time is going to be delayed. There may have issues just processing that information, and not only possible limitations with their range of motion, cervical spine, and everything else, that we may have some limitations there that will increase the risk of other injuries too. And
Mhm.
that's a legal, compliance type of risk management issue at the same time. And when you're dealing with a high school setting, with university setting, I know that we see this also professionally too, that because the performing arts doesn't have some of these the same levels of clearance, the same levels of responsibility of having to report and have clearance and get this education, that
Yes.
it makes it very challenging for everyone to know, everyone to be on the same page, but also
Mhm.
everyone to follow every single step to make sure that they're safe to get back. And so it's been a huge educational portion of this project implementation. But then as we've gone through and done dance, because we have a lot of concussions in fall of last year, so I'm gearing up for fall
Mm.
semester right now, just
Yeah.
hoping everything goes good now that we have a system in place. But in looking at how many that we had and how that was managed, there are some departments that have someone on staff all the time to be able to assist. Or if you have an AT or PT that are on, they're just on with the dance department, or they're just on.
Mhm.
So, and then even when we look at a high school setting, you're going to have an athletic trainer possibly, but they're only serving the sports teams. What
Yep.
happens if you have a dancer that's from a competitive studio that has something happen, or they're from a gymnastics gym or figure skating? I mean,
Mhm.
we're seeing this across the board with all our performers. And then I've seen a huge disconnect as well from music, not really seeing the need to even have any education in this because they're like, we're not getting concussed whenever we're in orchestra. But if you're concussed outside the classroom, that's going to affect your ability to practice and play in orchestra. So it's
Yes.
been a huge buy-in and education standpoint to be able to get everybody on the same page. But we were able to go through and do dance last year, soft rollout, figure things out so that we could then broaden it to the entirety of the performing arts university community, and
Mhm.
then see how things end up going with that rollout this year as well.
Mhm. I want to take a step back
Mhm.
for a moment and thinking about a bit of what we were talking about of, a lot of times the education, the protocols, all of that don't exist
Yes.
within the performing arts space when it comes to dance teachers, owners, artistic directors, anybody like that in some sort of leadership role amongst
Mhm.
the dancers. And so sometimes I've seen situations where a dancer is concussed and the expectation is, well, you still come to class and you still need
Mhm.
to observe and all of that sort of thing. For folks who aren't familiar with concussions, what are
Mhm.
maybe some of the more typical presentations or symptoms that a dancer might complain of to even make you aware of, maybe something else needs
Yes.
to happen?
Yeah, and there's, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot of possible symptoms that are rolled into that. I mean, I would say one of the most common ones that we see is headache, but there can be a whole cluster of physical symptoms that are associated with that. They may feel dizzy, they may feel lightheaded, they may feel, not just a headache, where the spot where they may have gotten hit, because you can also get it from a whiplash. You can also get it from hairography that you do with choreography if you do it repetitively enough, but not just from the spot, but sometimes the opposite spot on the head because of that kind of pressure into the brain, and where the brain sloshes around and goes from one side to the other. And so we have physical symptoms. We have even like neck tightness, things trying to brace, cognitive symptoms, feeling foggy, feeling out of it, not really feeling like yourself, feeling more tired, sometimes even feeling less tired. Insomnia can be one too. You can have changes in your mood if you end up having, if you know that you have tendencies towards, either you have a diagnosis of depression or anxiety, you can become more depressed or anxious. We see students sometimes, especially going through teenage years, where we know that hormones go up and down, that you may think it's the hormones, but it may actually be some of these symptoms, vestibular symptoms as well, like not being able to turn quite as fast without having some of those, feeling like you're going to fall over. Yeah, there's a lot, and it's tough because even when we look at symptom presentation, and I'm more than happy to even include in any of the long list of symptoms, there are red flag symptoms too. So we know
Mhm.
if someone has something like a loss of consciousness, if they have a declining mental state, so we can see that they're really heading south fast, they're not themselves. If they're vomiting
Mhm.
repetitively, if they're noting any midline neck pain, like right in the middle of the spine, neck pain, things like that mean they have to go to the ER ASAP, because we're concerned about not only the possibility of a concussion, which is a mild traumatic brain injury, but other things that may be happening, like a neck injury and other areas that would potentially be life threatening. So we
Mhm.
need to make sure that that's going on. But then there's a law within the United States that notes, especially for sports, that you need to, if there's a suspected concussion, head injury, suspected concussion, that you sit out in sports for 24 hours. And the reason why, even if, and I've had this happen before, where I've had students go and be seen by urgent care, or students go be seen by the ER, and they're cleared. They're like, you don't have a concussion. But then they come back to class, or they come back to the performance, and they're wondering, but I was cleared from the
Mhm.
physician. But concussion symptoms may take hours to present. And so even if you're like, okay, I'm fine in the moment, we need to still get you through some tests, because most likely they didn't do vestibular tests. They didn't do VOMs on you whenever you're in the ER. They may not have a chronic, like a full history of everything that was going on with you. You may have taken some headache medicine before you went to the ER to depress that headache that you have. And there's even sometimes too, we do concussion baseline assessments with our dance students, just to be able to see what their baseline level is. You
Mhm.
go to the ER, they're not going to have that information.
Right.
So they're not going to know that you usually don't have any headache whatsoever. You have no dizziness whatsoever. And then now, what are your scores? What are your symptoms trying to present as? And so I think having that connection with someone who can assist, who knows maybe a bit about dance medicine, but then also knows a bit about concussion, can be really helpful in making that connect, because a lot of people want to get
Mhm.
back really fast. I understand, like, I get it. I didn't want to miss any dance out either.
Yes.
But you have to be safe about it at the same times, especially and the things we see with some of the younger kiddos. And so, again, looking at the audience, if you're under the age of 18, your brain is just more vulnerable too, and not all of the areas of your brain have fully developed yet, including that frontal lobe that's helping out with the higher executive processing and functioning in your personality. And you don't want to mess with that. And so, let's maybe protect it a little bit, because we talked about that, the second impact syndrome, that if you get hurt again, if you get hit again, like I said, it can be from a blow, it can be from some type of a force. I mean, anything, that your risk of having a more traumatic brain injury or brain swelling or anything else is much higher.
Yes.
And because your brain hasn't fully healed, before you then had another injury happen, and that could potentially be life-threatening.
Mhm.
So I think having some of this education out there, I think it's, again, more permeated in the sport community, not as much in the dance medicine community or performing arts in general, and it's information that needs to get pushed out for sure.
Mhm. Well, and I think to go back to one of your points that's important too is sometimes it can be hard to sift through some of this if they have some other things that
Yeah.
might explain some of what's going on, whether it's hormonal changes, like you
Mhm.
mentioned, if they already suffer with migraines and they're like, well, I
Mhm.
have a headache, but
Yeah.
but it's different than my normal
Yeah.
headaches, or things like that, where it takes a little bit more digging to tease out that maybe
Agreed.
this isn't a typical thing
Yeah.
either.
Yeah,
Makes it
and that's exactly. And as I noted, I mean, there's to say that you're going to have a concussion and it will follow the same exact symptom presentation is not going to happen, because it depends on how you were hit, like how the injury
Mhm,
happened, the intensity, the speed, the force of it, exactly where in the brain you were hit to. They had found that if you get one that's not right to the back, but like to the side and back, that can actually be even more traumatic just because of what's happening back there in the brain.
mhm,
But then, two, if you've had a history of concussions, if you have, as you noted, a history of headaches, we notice that any of our patients, not even performers, but any patient that has vestibular symptoms right after they have a head injury, their risk of having a prolonged recovery is that much higher. So if they have the dizziness, if they have the nausea, if they have all these things, they, they're spinning, or they feel like the room is spinning or anything, that
mhm,
can maybe increase the time frame. And they usually quote 7 to 10 days to be able to get better from a concussion. These people may take 30 days or longer, depending. And then it gets to be
mhm,
very challenging with their return to class, because if they went back too soon, that can delay it even further. But then they're now taken out of that class, to be able to participate. And where's their identity? How is that wrapped up into what they're doing? And
mhm.
not being able to be around their friends or social network to be able to be teens or be college age students, it gets to
Yeah.
be very, very tough. And how much are they missing out on then, too?
For folks who are in some of those, again, sort of leadership positions in a dance organization, they're hearing this and they go, "Oh, maybe we have some work to do. Maybe we have
Yeah.
some education that we need to seek out." What would be your recommendations for folks who are like, "We need to do something with this, but I don't know what to do or who to talk to?"
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to help. Number one,
Mhm.
I would say, please ask me questions. This is what we've been immersed in, and I know that the presentation that I gave with the Performing Arts Medical Association, PAMA, that was back in July. It was very helpful, because one of the things that we had seen with what we put out for the dance department, and then what we were trying to replicate. I'm also on faculty with the University of Michigan, the Concussion Center, and what we're trying to do and have these collaborations within the performing arts community is exactly that. We're trying to see how things work here, what we've learned. And the PAMA presentation that I did was really trying to create a roadmap and being able to institute what we had or something similar, again, depending on the size, depending on the age, depending on funding, anything like that, of what you have, and being able to put together some type of a program within your own organization or institution.
Mhm.
So it very well is like a blueprint. So this is what we did. These were our stakeholders. These were our people that were involved. These were the steps that it took for us to get there. And so here you go. And if there's questions, if there's any concerns, I mean, it's something that's scalable depending on what you have access to.
Mhm.
I know I've had conversations with dance studios as well. And some of that is just, okay, is there education that we can give? Can we give a workshop? Can we go through and at least put a paper up? We have this in our admin's office here in the dance department. That's just this, these are the red flags. And
Yeah.
so if you have this, go to the ER. And then, but then it's also, okay, well, what do you do if someone gets injured in class? Do you call 911? What happens next? And kind of knowing this whole procedure of what to do from an emergency preparedness standpoint is also really helpful. And so for PTs that may not have a background in emergency response, like I'm SES, so I'm able to institute some of these emergency action plans,
Mhm.
work with an athletic trainer. ATs are our friends, I know, in
Yes.
trying to in trying to work with Dr. Oh, that when I've been able to work with Alyssa, who has been our our PhD athletic trainer, the athletic trainers that I have at my clinic, they've really taught me a lot, especially when it comes to some of these emergency situations. And it can be very helpful, but then also calming for those people in leadership, the dance studio owners, the faculty, the admins, whatever, that are trying to roll this out, just to make sure that
Mhm.
you're working with healthcare providers, that you're having them check through things. Having that consultation can be really helpful to make sure you're checking all the boxes and that you're safe. There are other things that we have to look at if you are trying to do something within a university community or within a larger organization. And that includes things like talking to risk management, talking to compliance and legal, to make sure that whatever forms, anything that you need, if you have a lawyer that's with your business or whatever, making sure that they look through things, because these are head injuries and you want to make sure that you're covered. And so whatever documentation that you put out, then if it's not 100% what it needs to be, also increases your liability at the same time. So
Mhm.
those are things. And again, I'm happy to, if anybody has questions with this, it's all things that we have worked through. Happy to address any of that. But two, if you don't have some of those people lined up for your own organization, wherever you're at, across the US, across the world, that we want to make sure that you have maybe some of those connections locally as well.
Yes. Yeah. And I find, for so many of the things that we end up talking about for dance medicine, where it's like you don't have to have an entire thing integrated and all your own people hired and, all of that. That's great if that's what you
Mhm.
can do, but that's not realistic for everybody. And so just creating a network of who are
Yes.
your people, who are your folks that you can refer to or ask questions of. And then exactly what you were saying, like create policies and have your action plans in place and all of
Mhm.
that. And I mean, if someone's wanting to institute some of those, there is someone out there
Oh, yeah.
who can help them put that kind of stuff together.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, for athletic trainers, this is what they do. When you look at anybody who does sports management, I mean, these are a lot of the same things. We who helped us out the most, I would say, with our 911 emergency response policies, campus police. I
Mm,
mean, they
mhm.
were great. They're trained as first responders and they knew exactly what to do if they were going to show up. And then, so even just talking with your local fire department, police, I mean, this
Yeah.
is what they're doing. If something happens, they're going to know how to route things. And especially when it's an emergency and we're concerned and we don't know what to do, it is very, very helpful to talk with our first responders that are in that type of a role, that are used to dealing with emergencies, to be able to look at, okay, these are some steps, these are some easy things that you can institute, but then how is it then workable for your specific organization or business, for sure.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. All about building community in all sorts of
Exactly.
different ways. I want to shift gears a bit from talking about concussion to another topic that I know that you're really passionate about. That's the importance of the warm up and cool down when it comes to injury
Yep.
risk. Talk to us more about that.
Yeah, it is my soapbox. It's such a
Love it.
soapbox of mine. And I think my students, thankfully, I have new ones every year because they probably get sick of me talking about it. It's something that I talk about a lot on social media. It's something that I present a lot to high school students, to our college students here across all the departments, not even just dance, but all of the departments. And one of the biggest reasons why is because it's a thing you can do to help decrease your risk of injury. So if you do it pretty regularly, your injury risk should go down. And it's challenging because there's so many things that we don't have control over. We're not in control over our genetic makeup. We're not in control over the type of floors that there are or exactly what's happening in the environment around us. But this is something that we have control over. And so if there are things, I know IADMs have put like 20, 30 minutes is what you should be spending to be able to warm up. And it is very challenging depending on how busy your schedule is, or if you have class back to back to back, to be able to make that happen. But there are things that I've been able to do to look at, okay, what can you do between classes? What can you do if you have to sit for a period of time after you've had just a movement class to help you stretch out a little bit? But a lot of it
Mhm.
is education, because we'll have dancers sitting in their stretches still
Of
and what
course.
that looks like. And I just had a dancer patient this morning that they had noted that, yes, they're still sitting in stretches, or they're noticing that with some of the flexibility classes. And I know that we have people that are trained as flexibility coaches and that they have those certifications that are available. But I think it's challenging sometimes to know, okay, these are amazing stretches to be able to do, but what is the appropriateness of when you should do them and how long you should hold them for. And we know as a healthcare community that yes, we should do dynamic to start, make sure the body is warmed up. Yes, you can stretch, but moving through positions. But then at the end, then maybe then that we can hold. But if you're in competition, how long can you hold? Because is that going to relax the tissue too much? That could potentially alter how high you can jump or how much power you have or how much speed that you have to replicate any of your pieces of choreography. So again, it's a lot of education that's out there, trying to not only customize it to your exact needs, which I think gets to be tough because you'll take a class and then it's to the general dancer versus maybe if you have, I pulled both my hamstrings. So like maybe I need a little more hamstring help, but then you have people with really tight backs or you have people with a lot of tension in their neck or really tight pecs because they're doing this all the time. So that you may need to alter that. Yes, it's great to have general because you need a full body, but then having the opportunities to customize it based on their current situation, past medical history, and anything that they may be feeling right now can be really helpful too. But I'd say consistency is key. Trying to make sure you give it the time it needs, make sure you do it regularly, and really try to help your own body out because out of everything, yes, it's time, but it's something that we can control.
Well, and I think too, you were mentioning sort of general versus more individualized warm up based off of individual needs. I think also the idea that a lot of times instructors may have a set warm up for a class
Yes.
to
Yep.
work through whatever that warm up entails, but it's the same thing every single class versus maybe having things that better prepare the dancers for things that are coming up. So if I'm going to be working a lot on jumps today, maybe I need a little bit of a different warm up
Yes.
and cool down than
Yes.
if it's really turn heavy or we're just doing a lot of intricate footwork or something like that.
100%. Yeah. And so I think it's having the ability to look at, okay, you have a plan for what your class is going to be. You should also have a plan for what your preparation for that class is going to be. And that's what warm up is. And 100% agree with you that if you need to absorb shock, that's going to look different than if you're going to need the single leg stability of being able to do turns and getting everything set for that. But then working through the nuances of the feet. But then this is also across all different dance styles too. And we look at that there's going to be some injuries that may happen a little bit more regularly within ballet. That might be different than modern. That might be different than ballroom. That might be different than Irish dance. And we look at all of these different situations that we know that yes, there are going to be some similarities there, but if you also wanted to have it be preventative at the same time, that's going to have its own spin. So yes, preparatory, but also preventative, and making sure that is then reflective of what you're trying to then accomplish with the class. I would also say that I'm not sure how everyone feels about this, but this is just another little soapbox in relation to conditioning. I'm also seeing this in warm up and cool down a little bit.
Yeah.
You don't need a whole bunch of equipment
Yeah.
to do things.
Where it's like
body weight,
everything.
body weight's enough. So there are so many things that you can do that are just at your body weight. Yes, a band or two can be helpful sometimes. I can't tell you how many dance moms and teachers send me videos of people with ankle weights and arm weights on doing jumps and or yoga blocks between the knees at the same time or band. I mean, it's a whole process. So I think making sure that you can do just body weight, the minimum with good form with any of these types of conditioning, flexibility, warm up, cool down types of activities is a priority before anything else gets added.
Yes. Yeah. We don't need to spend 20 minutes getting in and out of all of the contractions
No.
just for our warm up.
Exactly.
Sure. Another thing I want to bring up too is sort of some of the maybe misinformation that we see online, whether it's social media or just searching the web, some of the sources of some of the information that we're seeing, because
Yes.
man, it is so easy to find all kinds of things. Whether or not it is the best information is a whole other question.
Yes. And so every fall I teach anatomy and physiology for the dancers with Michigan. And one of the things I have them do, which is inherent to our PT education, is a literature review. And I want them to find a journal article. And it has been a little bit harder with ChatGPT and being able to search something and have prompts and everything. But I want them to find a journal article. I give examples of it from whether it's Journal for Dance Medicine Science, whether it's looking at JSPT, I mean, anything that's out there. And I'm trying to find something that speaks to you, but then also tell me why it's a good research article. What level of evidence is it? How could it be improved? What is the N? How many subjects were there? Was it like what type of study was, double blinded? Was, RCT? I mean, looking at all that stuff, but then also, how did this information apply to you? Was it an injury that you had? Was it something that you wanted to learn more about because we covered it in class? Whatever. But then it starts to bring them into a little bit of an understanding of what evidence-based practice is, so that when they hear something, they see something that's out there in social media, then they'll start to be like, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like something that is based on science. And they may second guess, which is great, because again, we can have, and I've even seen this, it's challenging. Sometimes I'll see things that are from healthcare providers out there too, and they may put something out there as clickbait to be able to get more likes, to get more, but then not explain all the nuances, all the different points of view of things, which we have to be able to do, because we'll have patients with different points of view from our own. We'll have to go through people who are different ages, people who have different educational levels. And so we have to make sure that we're adjusting how we're doing patient education, how we are explaining things on a regular basis. And I see this so much on social media, where you'll have just a statement that gets put out there, and it will be usually something to ruffle feathers, something that will be somewhat controversial. And they'll do it to be able to get likes, get views, have people comment, to be able to move it to the top of the algorithm, but also not give either the reference of whatever they quoted, or they'll have different exercises that get put out there, but no real reference to how that helps out with choreography. It's very tough, because I get this fills up my inbox on a regular basis when people ask me, is this a good exercise? And I discuss, no, this is not a good exercise, and this is why it's not a good exercise. Or yes, it is, but you might need to do a couple things before you get to that very high level exercise to prepare your body, have some foundational training before you get there, because we see that as well. So I think even just having, and again, these are conversations that we can have as healthcare providers with our patients. Here are some ways that you can dissect what you're getting in your face all the time on any, with Instagram, TikTok, anywhere, to see if it is reliable, good, evidence-based, research-based information, or if it's someone's opinion. And it's tough, because when we look at experts, when we look at who puts information out there, it's kind of three different categories. It can be someone who has the credentials, has done the education, has the years, everything that they put into it. Okay, they have that background. They had the 10,000 hours to be a master at something, and then that's an expert on another level, because you've just put so much time. You may not have the education, but you put a lot of time into doing something. Okay, and then you have other people that the proof is in the pudding. They were an example of whatever that they tried to do. And so we can have people that are professional dancers, but don't have a background in any of these other science related things, that are then putting out exercises, and they look amazing doing it, but they've also been dancing for years and years. And then you have these little girls that are trying to do these amazing things, knowing that it takes all this time to be able to get that foundational training in the first place. So I think it's kind of knowing where your information is coming from, which type of expert that you're talking to, and then being able to dissect and be like, okay, if I want to know something specific about a medical condition, or I want to know something specific that may be very research based, here are some avenues for me to go to as well, to have that type of understanding.
Yes. And this goes back to that idea of, like, if you already have your people, your PT, your athletic trainer, your whomever that you've been working with for whatever reason, then it's like, hey, I saw this thing. What do you think? You can go and ask that question, instead of like, well, I'm going to give it a try and see what happens.
Well, I mean, and I'll have people that are on the verge of buying something, and they'll ask me, and I said, okay, why do you need this? Trying to see, I'm not trying to talk them up. I'm almost just, playing like the little person on the shoulder, being like, okay, Jiminy Cricket, like,
Mhm.
why do you need this? Why do you need to spend this money? Is this something that you could do with just a basic stretch or a basic exercise? Okay. And then we try to kind of talk through it. But it gets to be very tough, because whether it's doom scrolling, whether it's, trying to look on TikTok shop or whatever, and being able to get the new gadget or the thing that you think may give you the quickest results, a lot of this is just time and effort and trying to sift through what is actually reliable and what's not.
Most definitely. Well, I think this is a good opportunity for the special segment on the show. On every episode of Dance Med Spotlight, we have the final bow, essentially the take-home message. We've talked about a few different topics. If folks listen to this whole episode, what do you hope that they walk away with as like top 1 or 2 items?
I would say, I mean, I say this a lot to my patients and across the board, even to my students, that I want them to be their own advocate for their healthcare and their well-being. And having all the available information is definitely part of it. Being able to speak the same language as a healthcare provider is definitely part of it. But I think that it's also, like you said, having your team and making sure that you're building that from the start. If you are looking at trying to be a young dancer in through college and through professional, that making sure that you have that team around you. I would also say, for any of the studio owners or anybody who's in a faculty or any type of an administrative role within a dance organization, don't be scared of healthcare providers. We're here to help you. We want to help you. You know so much, and I love to work with those studio owners, and I'm not trying to take over any type of a job that they have. And I know that healthcare providers feel the same thing. We want to work with you.
Mhm.
And I think if you can build that team, but also teach your dancer to be their own advocate, to teach the parents to help them out, yes. But if this is something that they're going to do for longevity, for a possible career, they also have to learn how to do it themselves and speak up. And I think that can be very helpful in any type of a healthcare situation, whether it is a concussion, whether it is an acute injury, whether it is something that may mental health illness that may be plaguing them, that trying to see, okay, is there something that we can do to help you, for sure, but then we have to know what's going on with them in the first place, and they need to feel comfortable with that team around them to speak up.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. Last and certainly not least, the shameless plug. So this is your opportunity to plug anything, anyone, any organization that you want to.
Love
The floor is yours.
it. So I'm going to be putting out a lot of information. I have a website, and it is building right now with all the resources that are available. If you are a healthcare provider and you're going to IADMS in Vegas at the end of September, please come find me. I would love to chat with you. I'll be there for the entirety of it, because I have 3 different presentations that we're doing.
Awesome.
And then like I said, the website is huge. I mean, definitely take a follow on social media. I probably post the most on Instagram, because I do all those fun carousels and everything. There's a lot of educational content. And so if you're at all not knowing what is evidence-based, I mean, anything that I put out is evidence. I'll do some anecdotal, some story, fun stuff, but any of the things that are healthcare related are all based on evidence. If you want any further information with that, or if you wanted more information about the concussion programming protocol, any of that development within your own organization, please reach out to me directly. I'm more than happy to get you that as well. Along with that whole blueprint that we talked about, that was from PAMA, so that you can see how everything worked out from a university standpoint and how it could potentially apply to your organization or situation.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure
Thank
getting to
you.
chat about all of this. Dance Med Spotlight is hosted and produced by Alyssa Arms. We discuss all things dance medicine. This has been another episode from Dance Med Spotlight. The Dance Med Spotlight is intended for educational purposes only. No clinical decision-making should be based solely on one source. While care is taken to ensure accuracy, factual errors can be present.